Hey, this is Notser. In today's video, I want to share with you 8.0 Battleships. This is the public test server, and this is considering the aircraft carrier rework. My build is on the screen. Note that this is the build on my live client. It's a 15 skill. Normally I have a 19, but I have in slot 3 AA gun extension, range extension, and then in my commander skill, I have advanced firing training. Both of these skills on the live client would extend the AA gun range. And yet on the minimap, clearly they haven't been extended. So for the module that's in slot 3, instead of range extension on your AA, it now provides 2 extra flak bursts. Advanced firing training still provides the secondary battery range. It still provides small caliber battery range. But for AA, it improves the effectiveness. And then on top of that, we have this brand new sector system. This is replacing your ability to select your cursor and set a primary for your AA to focus on. That no longer exists in the game. What they've replaced it with is that sector system where you select either the port or the starboard side of the ship. And once it's taken effect, you will see on the compass in the bottom left-hand corner a indicator for the enhanced side of the ship. And depending on the type of ship, it takes longer to select the sector and switch it over. Battleships are, I think, 15. Light cruisers are like 5 seconds. I think heavy cruisers are 10. And I think DDs are like 5 or 7 seconds. Now, visually, this looks awesome. You know, I'm trying to coordinate the facing of my ship so I have the extra, more powerful sector facing the incoming enemy aircraft. However, I don't like how the sector goes on the entire screen. It hides your ribbons. It hides the number of ships that are alive on the top of the screen. It even hides how much capture. And it doesn't really work as a combat skill. It's really a passive, in the background thing that you manage. But it seems that they want to discourage it in combat. But I'm a player who's always like, I have to min-max each and every attacking squadron. I have to focus it with my cursor. You can't do that anymore. This is the most you can do. So Wargaming, I beg you, make it a little bit more action, a little bit more active in my anti-air role, and a little less passive. I wish that you would have an option for the player to have the sector maybe pop out from the compass and then go right back in without just concealing the entire screen. It makes no sense in combat to conceal it. I think that's a sign that they don't want that. On top of all those changes, they also changed the Catapult fighter. Now, the Catapult fighter used to be a godsend. It used to be absolutely insane. It was a 6-minute hydro that, rotated around the battleship and protected him. Then they nerfed it to about 1 minute and 30 seconds for battleships. Cruisers still have the 5 minute or 6 minutes it exists in the world in 7.12, but in 8.0 that doesn't exist any longer. It's a brand new Catapult fighter, and it's for self-defense. It lasts for 30 seconds, and it does a ton of damage to enemy incoming aircraft. It's really only for self-defense, though, but it recharges very quickly. So, in theory, if you were, on a flank, isolated, far away from the enemy aircraft carrier, you could use your Catapult fighter to fend off an attack, have it on cooldown, and then have it come off a cooldown just in time to, once again, defend your ship. I really like that the Catapult fighter is actually an option once again. I felt like the scout aircraft replaced it for everything except for, maybe the most extreme example. And I don't want it to be just an easy decision. Just equip scout and go with it. Well, no, that decision is no longer easy. It is, in fact, a real choice. And I highly, highly approve of this change. This is one of the best parts about this. Having said all that, though, I don't know. I don't know that investing the kind of modules and commander skills is lucrative enough. I don't see the kind of return on the commander skill investment to justify that kind of AA improvement. Remember, I have access to the AA gun mod extension, which is just double flak burst, and then I have advanced firing training, and yet these enemies are pretty successful in attacking friendlies that are near me. The lack of range on my AA is a huge, huge nerf just across the board. It removes the ability for ships to provide AA cover for other ships, really. It's basically self-defense. Your AA is self-defense unless you're sailing right on top of someone. And I'm really concerned about this aspect of it, wargaming. I'm going to have more examples coming up in the next few days. You know, cruiser, a American destroyer that's gone full AA. I just don't really feel like I'm getting enough return on my investment with all the AA. It feels like the best thing I can do is maybe equip my Catapult fighter, and yeah, of course it's taken. Equip my Catapult fighter as my AA defense system and focus primarily on mitigating everything else because there's actually a good return on that. They definitely need to dial in all of the AA. It's just not there yet. Now, the enemy Yamato is moving forward. I'm going to try and have broadside on him. You'll note that the sector is indicating that it's pointed towards the incoming enemy attack path. So I have the strongest AA facing forward. And that's great. And if I were to invest in manual AA, it would provide a completely different design than what it does on live. Live, it doubles the damage of your long range 85 or higher millimeter. On the 0.8.0 public test server client, it improves the sector damage by about 20%, and it also reduces the time it takes to switch sectors. So, much faster sector switching, you could have a higher percentage of high damage towards the incoming enemy aircraft. I just really don't like how it covers the screen. You know, I like the idea of the manual AA skill. It improves the speed of the sector. Maybe it should improve it even further. I just want a more active AA combat system. I want to be able to feel like my actions are mattering, even when considering the enemy aircraft. I don't want to just be something that is existing alongside my ship, and I don't have a lot of control over it. I just really feel like AA is a step backwards from a gameplay standpoint from surface ships. I don't like how confusing some of the changes are, and it just isn't really explained. You know, the sector system. I've had multiple people who have played extensively on the public test server come up to me and go, I didn't know you could do that. It's just not incorporated in the game right. It's like they're trying to hide the fact that you can control your AA. So just could you imagine how disappointed those players would be when they're presented with what is seemingly absolutely nothing they could do to fight off enemy aircraft? It's literally up to just maneuvering and the enemy's ability to fight. And I'm sure that's the case for a lot of players. I'm sure a high percentage are not even doing the sector defense. It's just not something that Wargaming has communicated. It's not something that is obvious in game. I don't see any return on the damage numbers that are going off on the enemy aircraft as they're flying through my flak and stuff like that. It really kind of needs to be a higher damage number. You know, it has to have a real obvious improvement over the non-sector, otherwise the feedback is just not going to be adequate. And that's where I think it feels like right now. I could see the potential in a sector control gameplay. It needs to be more active in combat, but I could see the potential. I don't see the potential when it's not presented at all. Not a single thing is telling me or encouraging me to make use of this mechanic. It's just merely there. Now, note that I used my aircraft catapult, and they now have two types of defense. You have your ship shooting aircraft down, which I've shot 14 down, but you also have friendly aircraft shooting down enemy aircraft, which I've shot down 5 of. So my catapult is responsible for, basically wiping out that incoming attack. We've got the rocket aircraft, that's what the icon means. And we have this midway who's attempting to defend himself. Note that it's a double aircraft carrier game too. The Catapult fighter, completely sufficient for 1, but 2, it gets overwhelmed. It gets way overwhelmed, and you're left with this sector passive play, where I'm, playing with my ships, and I love that, but I just let it happen. I can't really do anything with the aircraft as they fly over me. I could switch the sector back and forth, but it's not going to switch fast enough to keep up with them, especially as a battleship. If I was a cruiser, it's a completely different story, and I'll show that as well. But from a battleship standpoint, I am basically expected to use my catapult, or accept that I'm going to die if an enemy aircraft carrier wants to kill me. You pretty much have only that option right now with the AA system. It's just not good enough. The sector system, the passive damage, it's not good enough. You can't reliably fight off enemies. They will always get chip damage, and they will always have unlimited aircraft. And I've seen the argument, oh, your AA gun mounts, they can break, whereas the enemy aircraft carrier has infinite planes, so eventually they can, just weather the storm and break through. Well, unfortunately, we're not even to that point. A full 100% healthy anti-air system is still not enough to do a dent in the squadron as it attacks. It feels completely and utterly inadequate at full strength in certain situations. So why the hell would it matter if the AA is full health or not? They didn't even get the full health part of it done correct. And I'm just so concerned by this wargaming. The AA system is probably the most important part of the entire gameplay that you're changing. And it feels like it's probably the least important part of it as far as the player is concerned in the gameplay decisions they've chosen. I really would like a little bit more improvement on this aspect. Now, note that the enemy bomber, by the way, the Japanese use AP bombs, the Americans use HE bombs. Both of their bombs are ridiculous for different reasons. My catapult fighter is what saves my butt here. It absolutely fights off the squadron. And look, I don't have any charges left. They're gone. It just feels really weird, the current designs that they've chosen. And I want them to improve. I want the AA to feel more impactful. I kind of feel like the catapult fighter needs to feel a little less necessary. But we shot down 9 aircraft with our catapult and 17 with our AA systems. Now, obviously, there were friendlies in the area, and it could have just been the last point of damage. But we defended ourselves pretty well. However, it would just keep going until he kills me. So, leave in the comments your thoughts on Battleship 8.0 gameplay. I really want to hear it. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you next time.